Hello and welcome to the 99 Yards podcast. We're back talking all things NFL draft. And today we're going to look at the super duper stars, the 5-star blue chip prospects that we're probably going to be bored of talking about by the time we get to the draft. But before that, we're going to have a quick recap of the change of the draft order that happened thanks to the conclusion of the NFL regular season. But before that, how about we introduce ourselves? I'm your host, Brian, and I'm delighted to be joined, as ever, by Owen and Stu. How are you doing, guys?
I think we'll both say the same thing. We're very well, thanks, Brian. Draft order is finalized, so we can start when we get to mock drafts, actually thinking about what these teams might do.
Yeah, the regular season's now in the can. We know at least the first 18 picks of the NFL draft now, so that's a really good starting board for working out what might transpire. It is always a bit of a guessing game, but at least there's some bit more of a clear direction of how we start thinking about things now.
Absolutely, yep. NFL regular season is done, finito. Congrats, we made the playoffs. But I think we can say as a group, as a Cowboys fan, a Falcons fan, and a Dolphins fan, playoffs aren't all that, are they?
Overrated.
Yeah, who needs him? But yeah, let's look forward to the draft. We had a couple of moves and shakers in terms of who picks where. The big ones are Patriots, right? They they move from the top spot. How do you reckon that affects what we think might happen?
I think it gives them a little bit less leverage than they might have had. As to the prospect they will pick, it might not actually change. They might have had someone trade into that one spot if somebody became desperate for a quarterback. So the player they might just not get the same recompense back on top of who they picked. I think is the main change for the Patriots there. They also have to wait and see what people pick in front of them instead of just choosing whoever they want if they decided to or moving down. So nice last move by Gerard Mayo. Give him that little kick as on his way out the door.
Yeah, I'd be inclined to think that they'll get the same player at 4 that they would probably be targeting at 1 if we think quarterbacks are going to go highly. So I don't think it's going to make much difference in that sense. And when it comes to capital, if they were going to trade back, I don't think they'd be looking at or wanting to trade that far back anyway, because you're going to miss out on one of the blue chip players that we're going to speak about a little bit later on. There's only a handful of them. So if you move too far back, then you're going to be out of range for one of the star players in this draft. And as I said, there isn't many of them. So I don't think it's going to matter that much to the Patriots. But yeah, they could have maybe got a little bit extra capital if they were at 1. But that's presuming that someone would actually want to take that.
Yeah, and I'm not sure this year whether a lot of extra picks would have been that tempting anyway. The Patriots also have a huge amount of money to spend in free agency, so they're not relying on everything being a draft pick. So it's nice to maybe just round out the season with a win and a little bit of a high rather than another defeat. But I don't know how much of a difference it's really going to make overall to the Patriots franchise.
There we go, Patriots fans. As if you've not had enough good news for the last 20 years. In terms of we're
not bitter at all.
Sorry, it's just the Chiefs now, isn't it? It's just there to agree. In terms of we did our first mock draft last week. Of course, it changed since then, which it's bound to. We'll talk about quarterbacks, of course. We had quarterbacks going 3 and 4. Do you think they make it to 3 and 4, or do you think they might go 1 and 2 now?
I think they'll be favourite to go. I think if you were putting money on it, you'd put 2 in the top 3. I think is the best way to phrase it. One of the Titans at 1, Browns at 2, Giants at 3. You have to think that at least 2 of those teams would be targeting a quarterback. I'd be inclined to think that would be the Titans and the Giants. I don't see any way that the Giants can go into the 2025 season bringing back Drew Lock. That they've got to do something. And who do they target in free agency? Or maybe they can get Kirk Cousins with a trade, or it doesn't seem like Sam Darnold would want to go back to New York. That just doesn't seem to make any sense. Just maybe take a chance on Justin Fields. But when you're fighting for your job, like Brian Daboll is and Joe Shane is, that they've got to swing for it. Taking Justin Fields on a minimum contract isn't going to save your job next year. So they're going to have to do something. So you have to think the Giants are probably locked into it. They've lost a lot of leverage sitting there at 3, the way that this has worked out, because they could just be left with whatever quarterback isn't taken above. I think the Titans, now they're at 1, I tend to think that they will, the way this has fallen. And given the contract for Deshaun Watson, that seems like the prime trade-up spot rather than them actually taking a quarterback.
Yeah, I think the Titans maybe want to do something in that quarterback and give the team a little bit of hope. They're coming up to a new stadium as well. I know that's going to be in a couple of years' time. That's going to happen, but they want to start having a bit of buzz around themselves. But teams always think about the on-field product, but there's that off-field thing as well. We've got to sell tickets to this new stadium. Do they want to make a splash and have someone as high profile as Shadur Sanders with Dion there as well at this time? Possibly, but I think that they will take a swing at a quarterback. I don't think Will Levis is going to stop you doing that if you really are high on somebody. And the Giants, if they do take a rookie and they do okay with him, it maybe does buy themselves a little bit of time as a head coach. Okay, they might not win a lot of games, but actually we've got a rookie, he's doing really well. Look how much we've progressed him, because this regime hasn't had to pick a quarterback yet. And they maybe want to go down that route and show what they can offer with a rookie. So, but
to be fair, they didn't have to pay Daniel Jones all that money.
They didn't.
They might not have had their pick, but they did choose to pay him.
They did the wrong thing at the wrong time, as they made the playoffs when they didn't really need to. Along with Minnesota did the same, but Minnesota decided, actually, we're going to stick with our plan and our project, whereas the Giants went, oh, we're amazing. We just need to add more to Daniel Jones and we're going to kick on. And it was definitely the wrong thing to do. So, yeah, I agree they didn't have to pay him, but they maybe want to say, look, we want to have a crack at our own quarterback as well.
Yeah, and then Will Levis then becomes a potential trade candidate, because I don't think you can roll into 2025 with a rookie and Will Levis. I think you would have to get some type of veteran in that room, whether it's Cam Ward or Shadur Sanders. You'd like to think that there would be a different presence and a different voice in that room that wasn't Will Levis as a backup.
It would also be the same kind of situation, I guess, as the Bears found themselves, and they didn't want to have Justin Fields and
exactly.
Caleb Williams in the same room just a year ago. So Will Levis is, if they do draft a quarterback, I don't think Will Levis will be a Tennessee Titan.
Yeah. And it's not a massive deal that he wasn't a first round pick anyway, so it's not like they can say they failed. They took a chance on him in the second round, probably the right thing to do, and it just hasn't worked out.
And it might not be a bad thing, we're talking about draft prospects, but it might not be a bad thing for Will Levis either, to step out of that firing line for a little bit and go somewhere, be a backup, and see what happens.
Indeed. Well, any other movers, shakers you want to talk about? There wasn't too much, especially at the top. The likes of the Raiders moved up a couple of spots. Carolina won, so they moved down a little bit. But other than that, it's not too different.
It's that 6-7 Raiders Jets combination. We both could also be looking at quarterbacks that, in whole, they are losers in the draft order, because they really could have done with being a few spots higher if they are wanting to target a quarterback. I'm inclined not to hype it up too much, because we thought there would be quarterbacks coming off the board. Like what a year it was that Kenny Pickett went, and we thought Malik Willis would be a first rounder, and it didn't happen. But there isn't the supply that meets the demand here, which means that you expect that they're going to go, and this crop is better than that class. So I think Raiders are in a difficult position at 6, because they might have to try move up potentially with the Browns. But I guess it would depend what they do at head coach, what would dictate that. I don't know, maybe Bill Belichick leaves North Carolina and heads to Las Vegas, and they do something there. And then the Jets are just in no man's land there, aren't they, with Aaron Rodgers potentially leaving. that is a really sticking point for them.
He's got a buyout clause before the end of June as well, hasn't he, Bill Belichick? So who knows? And it's interesting you just touched about head coaches. If you look at picks 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, and 10, all need new head coaches as well. And they're all the teams that some of them could do with quarterbacks, and they're out of that reach of the quarterbacks. Patriots at 4 and the Jaguars at 5 don't really need to be looking in that market, but Raiders, Jets, Saints, they could all do with a quarterback, and I just don't think there's that ability to get up and get one there, unless the Browns want to come out. So you've got a few head coaching jobs there as well that are not as maybe attractive. They're not going to get the guys in that they want.
Yeah, I'll tell you who is really happy looking at the order. Jalen Milroe, who seems to be the consensus third quarterback in this class, is looking at this going, actually, money. If he's going to the Senior Bowl as well, it's a huge get for the Senior Bowl, because that quarterback class in Mobile was looking pretty terrible. But there's going to be a lot of interest in Jalen Milroe at the Senior Bowl, and if he can do anything exciting, then there's potentially he's going to go a lot higher than he should, and a lot higher than we're all expecting him to, because that type of athleticism, build, and the arm strength, it's the prototypical build, if you like, of a quarterback. He just doesn't have it all together yet.
Do you think then that the likes of Drew Aller might go, I've had a really good college play? I know he said he's going back to college and goes, I could crack top 10 easily here.
Yeah, I've seen this a lot. No, I don't think he would, because he will have already spoken to the advisory board. We don't know what they would have said. I think he would have gone in the first round. The only way I could see it happening is if they win the national championship, because Bo Prabula, who was the backup, has transferred out. He's going to Missouri. So if Drew Aller leaves in the draft, then they're really left with freshmen in the room, and they're then going to have to enter the market. And Drew Aller is quite close with James Franklin, the head coach at Penn State. So I don't think he would leave them in that situation. Maybe if the backup was still there, then that could happen. But you have to think that a more nuanced conversation's gone on there to make him transfer. So no, I don't think it would happen, and he'll probably enter next season as the QB1.
Good stuff. All right, as promised, it's time to look at the blue chip guys, the top of the class, the big dogs, the 5-star prospects, the guys who, as Tina Turner would say, are simply the best.
Don't sing that song in front of an Aberdeen fan when it's a Rangers song.
Oh, I don't know that, do I? Come on. And kick us off. Who's one of the tip-top prospects we can expect to see flying off the board very early on day one?
Yeah, so I think there's only a handful of blue chip players in this class. I think we will both agree that Travis Hunter is the first name that should be mentioned in terms of blue chip players. He's probably the number one player in this draft. And when we talk about blue chip players, they are the elite prospects in this class. It's different to generational. You'll hear the word generational being thrown around. I don't know if you could say any player in this draft is generational like we've seen prior. Maybe you could say Travis Hunter is, just because of how unique of an athlete he is. But it's players that you see that they would be probably at the top of their position group in any given draft, and they're surefire can't miss prospects. And I think Travis Hunter will be one of those, an absolutely elite athlete, cornerback and wide receiver. I project him to be a cornerback that will take some snaps at wide receiver in sub packages. I wouldn't have him full time at wide receiver just because of the toll that'll take. But I would have him play in some crafty, elusive plays that you can get him involved in. Really intelligent, has the best ball skills in this class, and some of the best ball skills that I've evaluated. Taking the ball away is 4 interceptions in 2024 on top of 96 receptions, 1,258 yards and 15 touchdowns on offense. He is just elite in every way. I don't need to go on about him too much because everyone knows of Travis Hunter by now, but he is as unique a player as you find.
Yeah, I don't think I can't recall a time when you've had a guy who's played at such a level in two positions this late on in his college career. You hear of these guys sometimes in high school, maybe early in their college days, playing the position until they kind of settle into one. He's done it right through to the point he's going to be a very, very high draft pick, and that is really special. I'd agree. I would see him as a corner, I think, and he will be a very, very good corner. I think that he's got a lot of skills that you want to corner. I think he's got really, really good hips. He can just turn and go very quickly. He's really reactive, and his understanding of football is very, very high. He can read a wide receiver as a wide receiver whilst playing corner, which is something that we don't see very often. And the ball skills, he just doesn't drop anything. He's really very good, and he's competitive. He's really tough. Yeah, Travis Hunter is going to be a guy that a lot of teams will covet, but a lot of teams are going to be out of the range of being able to get hold of him.
Yeah, it's those mental traits that just set him apart. That his proactivity, his instincts, his intelligence, and his anticipation is absolutely second to none. He is the best player in this class for me. And I wouldn't say it was particularly close.
There we go. Start at the top. Stu, give us one.
Probably another safe one, I would say, is Ashton Jeanty, the running back, who everyone is talking about from Boise State. He is tore up college football this year. He, there's a lot of things to say about him. He just does a bit of everything really, really well. He's got burst, he's got long speed, his vision is very, very good. His contact balance is insane. He just bounces off people. I think he's got that low center of gravity. He's only about 5'9", I think, but he's a decent size on that. He's just racked up yards upon yards upon yards this season, almost to historic numbers. Didn't quite get there, but not far off it. I think he is one of the better running backs we've seen. We've had some running backs that have been very good recently. He's up there, but I think he's slightly different from some of these guys we've seen. We've seen Bijan and Jamar Gibbs, who are very good, but they've got a bit of pass. This guy is a bit more of a runner for me. And a lot of I think if you use him carefully and don't absolutely grind him into the ground, he's going to be really very productive.
Yeah, second in the Heisman Trophy voting, losing that to Travis Hunter. Historic season, 2,601 rushing yards with 29 rushing touchdowns. I also have him as a blue chip prospect, but I did think about it because what you would call a blue chip prospect, I don't think he's in the same caliber of prospect as we saw with Bijan Robinson and Saquon Barkley. So when you're talking about blue chip prospects, players that are worthy of going in the top 5, I don't think he's in that elite group, but he's not far behind them. I think he's a blue chip player and worthy of a top 10 pick in the class. Historic season, his vision is elite. He'll have probably paired with Bijan Robinson some of the best vision that we've evaluated. His contact balance, he just bounces off everything, evades tackles. No one can, once they get a hand of him, they're not bringing him down. Once he's got his foot in the ground, he's off. Yeah, so I think he could be drafted in the top 10. We'll wait and see if he is. He's worthy of all the praise, but I'm cautious of putting him in the same tier as Barkley and Robinson.
Yeah, he's got 1,889 yards after contact, which is crazy. Cool, moving on. O-line. Another, please.
Yeah, Mason Graham, the defensive tackle from Michigan. He is the best defensive tackle that we will have evaluated since doing this podcast. The only one that I can think better than him coming out since I've been looking at the draft would be Quinnen Williams, who went Did he go 3?
It was 3 to the Jets.
Yeah, to the Jets. I could see Mason Graham going in a similar range because he is an elite defensive tackle. He would be a home run selection. I don't think a team will miss on Mason Graham. Such a nuanced pass rusher, but he also is really good stuff in the run, which you don't often see defensive tackles doing both coming out of college. They're normally one or the other and then build upon it. 6'3", 318 pounds, just extreme strength that you're not moving him, and he will bulldoze his way into the backfield. He will, on passing downs, he will be a terror. We might not get the stats, but he'll always be causing disruption, which isn't always shown on stats, but he will affect every play.
Yeah, he's one of these guys who also has a wrestling background, which I like in the trenches. That leverage is, we tend to see it probably a bit more than the offensive lineman than the defensive lineman. But he is someone who just uses his, he's agile. He's got a relentless pursuit. His hand use is very good. He's got that nice combination of a strong upper body but a strong lower body as well. His kind of weight's nicely distributed. He's not top heavy. He's versatile. You can move him around a little bit. You don't want him too far off the that kind of 3 possibly. But he can do if you need him to. He's just an absolute nuisance. He's a complete and utter menace. And I would hate to be a centre or a guard lining up against him because he's not going to take any plays off. Every single play, it's full effort. And you've got to be on your toes if you want to keep Mason Graham quiet. Yeah, he is very, very good. And I could see somebody falling in love with Mason Graham and him going very early.
Lovely stuff. Stu, you could pick one for us.
Getting slim on the ground after this. we are getting slim, and probably I probably don't have much more after this one. And I'm even pushing it then, I think, to be absolute blue chip, but probably Abdul Carter, the edge rusher from Penn State. He is a super athletic. He's one of Feldman's freaks. They often do very well. He's got really good closing speed. He's heavy hitting. He's explosive. He's got that quickness and flexibility around the edge. Nice long arms. He's maybe not the strongest of guys. He could probably do with a bit of power improvement. And he does miss quite a bit of tackles in the open field as well, which I think is something he's going to have to sharpen up on. But he is a transition. He was playing as an off-ball linebacker and has transitioned more to edge. So his athleticism stands out, and the fact he's able to do what he can with not as much experience as some other guys. I still don't think he's the best edge rusher we've evaluated, and there has been quite a few better than him. But again, in this class, we're pushing him up maybe a little bit into that blue chip, but he's probably just kind of on that cusp for me.
No, I think he's a blue chip player. I think you have to remember that he's done this for 1 year at this level and got 12 sacks and 22 tackles for a loss. He does struggle against the run, though. That's where the strength comes into it. That's going to need some development, but that happens with edge rushers heading to the NFL, that they tend to be used as more of a designated pass rusher to start with, and as the season goes on, they'll start building that up. 6'3", 252 pounds, so on the lighter side for what the NFL likes, and there's a lot of light edge rushers in this class. When we get on to speaking about all the edge rushers, there's a lot in the 240s. There's a handful of them who are being talked about as first round players who are in the 240s, which is, Will Anderson got knocked because he went highly, but he was put down as a prospect because of his weight, and we're going to see a lot of players in that. But Abdul Carter's a little bit heavier, but yeah, an elite athlete, which is what sets him apart. See, on the freaks list, and he can win exclusively with his athleticism, and that's working in college. He does need to develop that pass rush, but we're seeing as the season's gone on his ability to keep doing. So you would say that if he continues that trajectory, then he will develop and evolve as a pass rusher in the NFL to be a standout rusher for a team. So I can see a team like the Patriots, who are needing that type of player, taking an Abdul Carter and just letting him grow as the team evolves. But yeah, I think he's the top edge rusher in this class, and I think he would be in most drafts, to be honest. There are some drafts where we've had good ones, but he'd be one or two in most, I would say.
And then I like what you talk about that trajectory, isn't it? A lot of the players that we see drafted highly aren't the best college footballers.
Yeah.
They're the ones who are, when you're thinking about drafting, you don't just pick, are they the best edge rushers in college football? We're talking about who's going to be the best NFL player, and that's where Carter has room to grow into.
Mm-hmm.
There we go. Stu's all out. All right, have you got anyone left?
I have one more.
Oh, good.
That's Will Johnson, the corner from Michigan, who I do really like. I can see why some don't have him as a blue chip player. I do get it, but I think he would be the top corner in most classes. He's a premier perimeter corner who does everything. Extremely physical, extremely quick, really athletic. He's been pro ready for the last 2 seasons. If he'd entered last season, he would have been a top 10 pick. Just as polished as they come and got Pro Bowl caliber upside. 6'2", 202 pounds. He's one of the top players in college football. His play has dropped in 2024 compared to 2023, but he has been suffering with some injuries. But yeah, his instincts, his awareness, paired with that athleticism and aggressiveness, I think he'll be a true lockdown corner in the NFL. And kind of looking back at college careers and what prospects were like coming out of college, I could see similarities to Patrick Surtain when he was coming out. That Surtain I would have above Will Johnson, but very similar evaluations and profiles for me.
Yeah, he's just that on that kind of probably, but I'm not quite.
If he'd had a better 2024 maybe didn't have those injuries, we'd be speaking about him as a top 2 player.
A little bit harsh when we think about the corners that we have had come out recently. When you talked about Surtain, and we've had the likes of Stingley and Sauce Gardner since we've been doing this, and even JC Horn and that, they've all been really,
those two were over just 2 classes. There were 3 other classes here that he probably would have been topping.
Yeah, you probably. I think I'm probably being a bit harsh on him at that stage, but I think he is a very, very good prospect, and looking at the list of teams that are picking in that top end, Jacksonville, they could certainly do with a corner. I think they would love to have someone like Will Johnson playing for them. So there is plenty of teams that you could see him go in that elite range. So totally get why you've gone there. I probably will come time. It's just going to take me a little bit of time to get there with him.
Yeah, I think if you watch the 2023 tape and then the 2024 tape, so watch it in order, I think you'll come round, because he would have been drafted in the top 10 just based on last year's tape. If we had opt-outs back, then he would have been a top 10 player either way. And I don't know what your next question was going to be there, Brian, but so that when we're talking about a handful of blue chip players, we are all about a handful. That Stu's got 5. Stu's got 4. I've got 5. That is way down compared to normal. I went back and looked at the other drafts that we've covered. This is the 5th that we've covered as a group. Interrupt me here, Stu, if you think differently. But in 2024, so last year, I would have had 8 blue chip players. I went to Caleb Williams, Marvin Harrison, Malik Neighbors, Joe Alt, Brock Bowers, Roma Dunze, Drake May, Olu Fashanu. I know you weren't as big as Fashanu, but that would be my list. So give or take, you would have been there or thereabouts, I would have thought. 2023 also had 8. Will Anderson, Jalen Carter, Bijan Robinson, Bryce Young, Christian Gonzalez, CJ Stroud, Brian Branch, Devon Witherspoon. For me, I know your list would have been slightly different, but we're talking similar numbers, I would have thought. 22, there was 7. Sauce Gardner, Derek Stingley, Garrett Wilson, Tyler Linderbaum, Kayvon Thibodeau, Aiden Hutchinson, Kyle Hamilton. And in 2021, they were 10. That was like the infamous draft that had Trevor Lawrence, Penny Sewell, Jamar Chase, Micah Parsons, Jalen Waddle, Kyle Pitts, Rashawn Slater, Christian Darrisaw, Patrick Surtain, and JC Horn. In terms of elite blue chip players, we're nowhere near the numbers that we would normally find.
We're not in that elite range, but I think we've got a reasonably deep draft. So it might not have that. If you're thinking about the cross sectional boards, all those guys at the far end too, they're good, but you're going to have that deep, round 2, round 3, getting into you're going to get good players there. So it might not have the peaks, but it might have in the depth of players to fill out rosters, and you need to have those kind of guys as well. Not everyone is going to be your premium elite player, because you have to construct a team, not just a bunch of all stars.
Yeah. It's going to be a meat and potatoes type draft where teams will probably, instead of having a 1 and a 2, would rather have 4 picks on day 2 and just load up on that type of talent. Because would I rather have 4 picks on day 2 or draft 18, 19, 20? I'll take the day 2 picks all day long and load up on decent players, because the talent drop off isn't going to be that considerable. And that's what we're saying, 4 or 5 blue chip players. That's why it's so important for the team drafting at the top when we're talking about them trading back, that if they do, they'll miss out on one of those, and there is a drop off. It's there's no one else really close to being a blue chip player. I would say there was no one else in my mind that's even in consideration to being a blue chip player. The next one would have been maybe Tyler Warren, a tight end, but I didn't really consider him as a blue chip player, but he'd probably be next on my board. So there's a drop off. So there's going to, if we see a trade, it might not even be for a quarterback. It could be just someone wanting to get up and get one of these players, because that's what's going to fill out their roster.
Wow, 5 years, making me feel old there.
Yeah, this is the 5th. Yeah, yeah.
It's all been downhill after that amazing one we did together. It's just like, quality player, absolute brilliant, amazing, and it's just.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we had 10 blue chip players in 2021. If we look back now, there would be more that we would put on that list, but that's how we evaluated them.
I remember watching that draft and Brian almost crying because the Cowboys didn't pick Patrick Surtain, and they ended up with Micah Parsons. Ended up with Micah Parsons. It's not exactly turned out terrible, has it?
Yeah.
Now getting a player like that, what was he picked? He was like picked 12 or 13
12,
or something.
Yeah.
You ain't getting a Micah Parsons at 12 in this draft.
No. Well, there we have it. Our 5 blue chippers: Travis Hunter, Ashton Jeanty, Mason Graham, Abdul Carter, and Will Johnson. All very, very, very good prospects. You heard it here first. Maybe not first, but not far off. We wanted to get chatting about those guys early. But yes, that's all we have time for, unfortunately, today. Take care of yourselves. We'll be back soon. Thanks for listening. See you later.